Welcome to The Explainer. Right now, there's a quiet crisis unfolding in literally millions of homes. Today, we're diving into a deeply modern phenomenon. It's one that is completely reshaping relationships across the country. And the crazy part? It's not happening through loud, dramatic fights, but through this silent, gradual disconnection. Just picture the scene for a second because it really captures the visceral reality of modern emotional isolation. Imagine a silent bedroom, lit only by the faint blue glow of a screen. Two people are physically inches away from each other in the exact same bed, but man, emotionally, they are continents apart. Millions of marriages are currently dying in exactly this kind of silence. And honestly, it's a tension you might even recognize in your own home. But before we go any further, we really need to establish what we're actually looking at here. This story, it isn't really about pornography in the traditional sense. It's actually about loneliness, and it's about modern America. We are looking at what objectively happens when technology figures out how to completely hijack human intimacy itself. Let's move to part one, the evolution of access, from scarcity to ubiquity. What is truly unprecedented about all this is the sheer speed of the change. I mean, think about it. For almost all of human history, explicit sexual imagery was really rare. It was restricted by geography, by cultural norms, and, frankly, by the physical effort you had to put in to find it. But within just a single generation, we went from late-night cable TV to the Wild West of the 1990s internet. Then came smartphones in the 2000s, the normalization of social media in the 2010s, all the way to today's hyper-predictive algorithms. Suddenly, we're carrying an infinite supply of stimulation right in our pockets, available 24/7 with absolutely zero social risk. Which brings us to part two, the neuroscience of novelty, hijacking the human brain. Okay, so we have to understand the actual mechanics of the brain here. You've probably heard of dopamine, right? It's the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, anticipation, reward, and reinforcement. Neuroscientists have spent years studying this, but what's really fascinating and kind of scary is that this exact brain chemistry is what tech engineers are studying today. They've figured out that the human brain reacts incredibly intensely to novelty, especially sexual novelty. The problem is, our brains were never ever designed to handle an endless, algorithmically tailored supply of it on demand. So what happens next? Well, it's a completely predictable biological cascade. As the brain gets flooded with this unlimited novelty, your tolerance increases. Then, your sensitivity to just normal, everyday stimuli decreases. And finally, escalation begins. The brain literally requires more and more intense stimulation just to reach that same baseline level. It's the exact same neurological mechanism we see in gambling addiction, but now it's quietly setting up shop right inside human intimacy. And that brings up a deeply provocative question that we all need to ask ourselves. What happens to a society when some of its most powerful technologies actually profit from emotional isolation itself? To answer that, we have to shift our perspective for a minute, away from the biology of the brain and over to the underlying economic forces of the digital age. Let's look at part three, the economics of loneliness, monetizing human attention. Consider the baseline conditions of modern life for a second. Let's be real. People are exhausted. We're overworked, we're financially anxious, trust is dropping across the board, community church attendance is declining, and millions of people are feeling deeply, profoundly isolated, even though we're constantly online. And tech companies, they discovered something terrifyingly profitable inside this exact environment. Human loneliness can be effectively monetized. The reality is pretty stark. Human attention became the ultimate product, and human desire became the marketplace. You see, in an attention economy built entirely on clicks and engagement, moderation is just bad for business. These algorithms are financially incentivized to escalate content just to keep you consuming. They are built to extract maximum attention from users who are just turning to their screens for a little bit of stress relief. Now for part four, the erosion of intimacy, the silent collision. So what does this actually do to a relationship? Well, 2 decades of research have repeatedly shown the exact same correlation. When consumption levels get heavy, the impact on the relationship is stark. We're talking lower relationship satisfaction, decreased sexual satisfaction, and a really marked reduction in trust, usually coupled with increased secrecy. For a lot of couples, this behavior eventually stops being about sex at all. It becomes much more about a profound emotional withdrawal. In practice, this withdrawal is totally silent. It's the hidden browser tabs, it's that late-night isolation, it's this profound emotional absence when you're sitting right there at dinner trying to have a conversation. And it creates this distorted digital comparison where partners just constantly feel inadequate. Eventually, the affection drops, the eye contact disappears. Couples stop feeling like lovers, and they essentially become roommates. Just two people managing stress together, silently fighting over a disconnection that neither of them can even fully articulate. The contrast here is just massive. Think about it. Digital intimacy offers this perfect escape without any vulnerability. It's instant. There's absolutely zero fear of rejection, endless novelty, and it requires zero emotional labor. But real intimacy is inherently slow. It is awkward, it's vulnerable, it's highly imperfect, and it requires immense patience and empathy. This perfectly highlights the grand contradiction of our time. Hyperconnection is not connection. The more our intimacy becomes digital, the harder real human intimacy becomes. A stressed out, exhausted brain will naturally gravitate toward the frictionless digital escape, and in the process, it slowly starves the real-world relationship of the effort it actually needs to survive. Let's look at Part 5, Reclaiming Human Connection, the antidote to isolation. Now, I know this sounds heavy, but this story isn't entirely hopeless, not at all. But rebuilding, it requires profound honesty. It starts with individuals finally opening up about their loneliness, their dependencies, and the emotional pain that's driving them to escape in the first place. It involves couples sitting down and having those incredibly difficult conversations, opening up about shame, and rebuilding trust through actual, messy vulnerability. Therapists and communities are rediscovering a basic truth. The human nervous system was built for deep relationships and presence. It was not built for endless digital stimulation. There is a powerful realization right at the heart of recovery, and it's this. The opposite of addiction is not simply abstinence. It is connection. That is such a profoundly powerful takeaway. You know, a society can become incredibly technologically advanced while emotionally collapsing underneath. Civilizations aren't held together by algorithms. They are held together by human bonds, by trust, empathy, and genuine emotional presence. Which leaves us with this final, critical thought to chew on. Will we, as human beings, choose to remain emotionally awake inside a world that is constantly trying to numb us? Because the greatest threat we face isn't merely the content on our screens. It's a society slowly losing the ability to truly see one another. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.